So, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Great. It's nice to see you nodding your heads. And good morning to those of you who are online, watching on YouTube, and appreciate all the ways in which people attend these Sunday morning sittings. And I appreciate all of you being here. Walking down here today, I reflect a little bit on how special it is to have a group of people arrive together to meditate together and have some kind of shared interest. Interest in meditating, perhaps, and then interested in the kind of space, the kind of ambiance or mutual support that comes when meditating together in a group. Some people find it hard to meditate alone, and being in a group is really inspiring. Some of you might be here because of the shared values. There might be some kind of values that are shared here that are very different than what you'd find if you go to the mall. You might feel a different set of values that are being operating there, maybe someplace. And some of you are here because you're interested in hearing some teachings, and maybe because there's something important going on for you in your life. You're suffering in some way or challenged in some way, and you want to address it, and you hope that the teachings will somehow touch something that you're struggling with or working with. So this is, kind of in the room here, a lot of different things that I'm reflecting on, and many different backgrounds here. The people, you all be coming here, and maybe some of you bring particular things with your background, and maybe some of you feel particularly safe coming into an environment like this, different than many other places. Some people maybe don't feel so safe in coming here, and looking around wondering, is this okay for me to be here? I'm maybe first time, or I'm a little different than what I think other people are like, and is this okay? And many years ago, there was a woman who came, and she was really concerned about coming here, and didn't quite feel like, this okay? And am I on the right track if I'm here? Because so many of the women here have gray hair. Maybe not today, but there's some. And in her culture, you didn't let your hair go gray, and so that was like a big deal for her. And it's just, do I have to be like that? And so what is here in the room? And the question for me is, speaking to all of you, Dharma teacher, is I could just kind of read an encyclopedia entry on some Buddhist topic, and then that's the teaching, you got it. But you're not here just for me to read an encyclopedic entry on what mindfulness is. There's also things like the way we're attuned to each other. We attune to this. Did the meditation do something with the attunement that we share, and the quiet, the peacefulness? What's here? You've sat being mindful for a period of time, and so what is the connection that you feel now to the room and the people that was different than when you came in here? And maybe some of you have never been in this community before. Has it changed at all? When I teach on YouTube, and today I don't have a laptop in front of me, but I usually have the screen in front of me, and it made such a big difference for me when I started teaching on YouTube. First time I thought this is weird. Before the pandemic, I would have said, no way, that can't be done. But it immediately changed because there were all these chats. And not everyone chats, but there was representative of those chats, and they were so friendly and so appreciative, and something was conveyed of a connection to people through those chats that they came alive for me, and there was much more than just providing information now. There was an exchange, there was a sense of feeling of a community and a connection. And maybe some of you doing on YouTube today are already have chatted to each other, or you will. saying hello, for example. And so to be attuned to what is here, what are you here for, and all the different ways in which you're here. Some of you have heavy things on your hearts. Some of you have, incurable diseases some people have recent losses and griefs. Some of you are really troubled by current events of different kinds. The anti-Semitism in this country that's growing seemingly. The racism in this country, which is maybe not growing, but becoming more public and prominent and seen, and the violence that's becoming stronger and stronger, and seemingly the mass shootings of black people and LGBTQ in Colorado Springs, black people in Buffalo, New York, and synagogues. So, is this in the room at all? Is this, kind of in the background? Or you came here for a respite from all that? You didn't want to have these things named here because, finally, this is a place where we don't do that and we can put it all down. So how do I, as a Dharma teacher, take all this into account? Should I take it into account, or should I just read this encyclopedia entry on mindfulness? And then, close the book and we can go home. That's and done with. There's much more going on here than just the bare teaching. There's a connection that we have. And part of that connection for me is that I'm conveying something that I find incredibly valuable, and I'm delighted and grateful that I have this opportunity to share it with a group of people. And I'd like to support you. I value you and feel like don't take it for granted that you've chosen to come here, you're doing this practice. So I think it's quite a beautiful thing you're doing, and have a lot of respect for what brought you here in all the different ways. So thank you. And I hope that what I do today here will have some bearing. And what I want to do today is partly inspired, taking this time at the beginning to establish or to explain all this, say all this. And that is that what does it mean to be mindful, practice mindfulness in our relationship with other people? And what is mindfulness enough? Is it enough just to show up and be with people mindfully? The answer to that depends a lot on what you mean by mindfulness, what you think it is. Lately, I've been thinking the heart of mindfulness practice is non-reactive awareness. We might react, but the awareness that is not caught in our own reactivity. And so we can bring a kind of attention that is not being influenced by our reactivity, so that we can bring a kind of presence, attention to whatever's happening, to ourselves, and the challenges we have internally, and the challenges we have externally, where we can be present, see it clearly, but the seeing is non-reactive. The seeing stays clear, balanced, maybe centered, maybe available to see clearly and say, this is what's happening. And if that kind of is one definition of mindfulness, non-reactive awareness, some people or slightly different definitions, some people get the idea and impression that that's enough. It's enough just to be, just be mindful. But it's a little bit passive, non-reactive awareness. And in being passive, is it enough just to be passively aware, non-reactively, and look at someone and be silent? I'm just being mindful with you. Many years ago, maybe when I was more foolish as a teacher, but I wanted to give a group of people. It was a weekend I was teaching on mindful speaking. And so I wanted to give them the experience of what it's like, all the different communication that goes on between us that is not words. So I asked them to go into dyads and have one person talk about something really important in their life. I forget what it was. and the other person to just listen and look without any expressions on their face, without any nodding, just kind of be fully present, but not, nod and do anything. And you can imagine that how that went. It felt pretty strange. And so the group got a very clear sense very quickly that there's much more going on in being present than just being non-reactively aware. There's other factors happening in it. And what are those other things that are useful, that are important? So one of the things is, could be attunement, to be attuned to the other person. And attunement means that we have a sense, an understanding of who the person is, what's going on with the individual or the group that we're here. And that, how do we become attuned? How do we have a bigger sense, a richer sense of who this person is and what they're saying, what they're feeling, what they're expressing, what they're hoping for, what their life is about, so that they feel seen. Not just heard and seen, just kind of this non-reactive awareness where we don't nod, but so they really feel like we're with them in some ways. And that takes taking a little bit of time, willing to learn about them, find out about them, take time to take them in and understand how they are. Maybe if you're just meeting someone, maybe with their posture, maybe with their emotional tone, maybe with their demeanor, that we take in and really feel connected to and somehow attuned to what's happening here with this person. And many years ago, I think something that was kind of a little turning point in my social life and caring, being attentive to people, was I was working at a restaurant and I was in the changing room and there was a changing of shifts and I was getting ready to leave and a friend of mine walked in. And I just, I blurted out something very quick and fun and, maybe funny, or just kind of made a joke or made a kind of something on a remark that I think was innocent and fine enough in and of itself. It was a way of making a connection. But what I hadn't done is taken the time to attune myself, to know and recognize what was going on for my friend. Where were they at? Because I was so spontaneous as soon as I saw my friend. And it turned out my friend, a friend of his had just died. And he was just coming to work, just carrying that with him. And I had missed that. And so in some ways I caused distress and harm because I hadn't taken the time to get attuned, to understand and see. And I probably could have picked it up quickly if I just kind of taken 2 seconds to wonder what was going on here for this person. And so to be attuned with someone, and so it means an interest in the person. And one of the things I think that is really helpful for proper attunement is to respect others, to respect their value, their importance, to respect their humanity, to really kind of be attuned, to pay attention, to listen, to learn, want to find out who this person is with respect. You're important. Respect means you're valuable. I see you as being important enough to get to know. And how many times do we not do that? Just like me with my friend blurting out. I've been in situations where I was kind of caught up in some concern, and I just really wanted to get my latest opinion out, and not really finding out whether the person wanted my opinion about something, or wanted to hear a 5-minute story about something that had happened to me, that day. And so, I've talked to people sometimes, just kind of caught up in my own thing, and then eventually halfway through or something, kind of noticing the person's eyes have glazed over. Uh-oh. And why didn't I notice this earlier? Did they just glaze over, or how long? How long were they glazed over? So to talk as if the other person is not there. And I've been on the receiving end of this, where people have talked to me, a few times, not a lot of times, but a few times over the many years, I've had people talk to me, and I kind of felt they must be somehow high on something. I don't think they were, on any drugs, but they were like I could have gone like this in front of their eyes, and they wouldn't have seen me. Their eyes were kind of locked into their concern, and it's kind of a little bit, I don't know if possessed is the right word, but really kind of in their thing in such an intensity that I kind of felt like I didn't exist, and listening to them. So to be attuned, to be interested in being attuned. So mindfulness in relationship to other people, I like to propose, is more than non-reactive awareness. It's an awareness that searches for an attunement. What is here? What's going on here? And that's also true for ourselves. The non-reactive awareness that we bring to ourselves is also an awareness that's doing something deeper to ourselves than just kind of matter-of-fact seeing things as they are. But it's a vehicle for deeper attunement to ourselves, to get to know ourselves in a deeper and fuller way. And then there's, with attunement, then there's also connection, the rapport that we have with someone. What is that connection? What is going on between us? Is there friendliness? Is there resistance? Is there hostility? Is there disinterest? Why does this person keep looking at the door? Not looking at me. There's something going on here. What's happening here in the connection? But I think I would like to suggest when we bring the mindfulness practice, if we really want to be mindful and really get the most out of mindfulness, that it means we're also being attuned to how we're connected and being careful with that. And perhaps being conscientious about a connection which is healthy, that is nourishing, that's supportive, that helps us feel more connected to each other rather than more separate. And one of the reflections that I often do during and also after being with someone was, did what I say and how we were together, do I now feel more connected with them, or do I feel more disconnected? And I've said things certainly that at the moment or sometimes afterwards, I think I could feel that the person kind of pulled back a little bit or shut down a little bit, or that made everyone quiet. And so there was a disconnect. So for example, some emotional expressions like anger will sever a connection. I mean, some people have been angry very quickly on short notice, and the connection to someone has been severed for decades. It doesn't take so much sometimes to a real dramatic severing of connections to happen. But you can feel, is that what you want? Do you want to kind of really have that cutting people off or pulling back? Or do you want to kind of create a possibility for deeper connection? What's the value? What's important for you? Is in your attunement to it all, do you recognize in yourself that you're afraid? What happens if your anxiety is there in the relationship, and maybe there's good reason for it, but how do you then establish connection, or how do you care for that connection with your anxiety? Do you tell someone, I feel anxious right now, but I still want to go for a walk with you, and maybe we'll just talk, just know that I feel anxious, that's how I am? Or do you somehow adjust the situation so you can feel more at ease with your anxiety? Maybe it's better if you go for a walk. Maybe it's better if you say, let's go get some tea. Just something to break, because it seems a little bit too intense otherwise. Just having a cup of tea between you, that can be a great protection. You don't have to be completely connected, because you're drinking tea. So this is a little, private thing I'll tell you, that I don't know how far I wanted to go on YouTube, the world, is, so I teach retreats a lot. And I love teaching these retreats. They're wonderful. But the most difficult part of the retreat for me is when it's finally over. We're in this big room at our retreat center, and we're sitting in a circle, and it's finally over. Everyone gets up, and they can talk to each other and everything. And that's the hardest part for me, because for good reasons, people feel grateful or feel like they've really shared something deep during the retreat. And I'm the teacher for the retreat, so I'm kind of the point person for what happened, maybe. And so people come up to me with certain kind of it's really important. They have important things they want to say. They say it with all this week-long retreat energy. And I'm, kind of, how I am with them has a little bit more value in that context than, just someone they met at the mall. And so, so if we're standing, I learned, I feel like I have to offer a lot of attention to really be there and receive them and acknowledge it. And so that's fine in and of itself, but there's a series of people like that. And so by the end, I'm exhausted. So that's the most tiring part of the whole retreat. So what I've learned to do is, with the closing circle, I'm sitting in a chair. And everyone gets up and talks. What I've learned to do is I don't leave the chair. And by not leaving the chair, there's a very different way that people, like what they expect from me, if I'm sitting in a chair and they come up to me, they kind of don't expect me to be fully there. I can be kind of casually there if I'm sitting in a chair. And then, so then it works really well for me, and I appreciate talking to them. It's nice, and I can be there, and it's somehow easier. The whole thing's more relaxed. And so here's, a connection that didn't work for me. I recognized it, and I found another way to be with people in a way that worked. So what is the connection? How do we establish the connection? What are we doing with that connection? Or how we're being with it? Are we losing connection? Are we severing connection? Are we healing connection? Are we making connection? Are we finding a way to be together that's nice? That's all part of the art of being mindful in relationship. So attunement, connection. And then there's also a connection, while we do this, to something that's other, different than just who we are together as a group. Individual, one-on-one, for example. There's also what else is here? So, for example, here at the IMC for this today, we're not just meeting at the cafeteria at the mall and to talk. We're here at a meditation center after having meditated together as a group. And there's something about this room with a high ceiling, a place people have been meditating now here for 20 years. Before those 20 years, there was about almost maybe 40 years where there were Christians who were here. There was a Christian church, and they were Christian mystics. And they sat in silence here in this room. And part of the reason they wanted us to have it was this church was because we sat in silence. They wanted to have that continue. So we have this, now you hear this history, right, of the place. And so there's something here that we're sitting in. There's the Dharma. We have the Buddha statue. So the Dharma, what does that mean for you? What are the associations we have? The values, the background. Some of you might have been born into a Buddhist family. And so there's a deep family connection, family history and associations. And that with being here in Buddhism, some people, it's other things that you associate with it that maybe it even touches onto the sacred. Coming in a place like this or something, maybe something spiritual here that you feel and sense. And what's going on here? So what is that? That's part of this picture too. So what else is going on when you're mindful of being with another person, mindful of being with a group of people? Is there an ambiance? Is there an environment? Is there a wider kind of association of feeling of what's here? And how do we take that into account? how do we care for that? And so, what else is present here? So, this question, what is present, is kind of the core, one way of saying the core question of mindfulness. What is present here? But if you ask the question, what is present here, you're opening yourself up to discover something, take the time to feel and sense and know what is present here. And if you only ask the question once, you probably only get one answer. If you ask the question 12 times, you get 12 different answers. There's so much here in any situation. But not so much that you have to ask this all the time, but mindfulness is also entering into situations kind of available, ready, to let yourself be informed. A kind of a way of paying attention that you're available to feel and discover and learn what else is here, what's here in the fullness of things. That you can't if you're completely preoccupied in your concern. And whatever it might be, and but there's a kind of a dropping of self-concern enough that you can, what is present here? And everything I'm talking about how to do this with other people is something we do to ourselves as well. What is present here in me? If you're caught up in the thoughts of self-concern, me, myself, and mine, ruminating about, something about yourself, it's difficult to have this kind of what is present here question, what's really here? To be attuned to yourself, to discover. The same thing, if you ask yourself that 12 questions in meditation, you might get 12 different answers. But you might be living in only one of them. What happens if you open, keep opening? What else is here? What else is here? So, so one way that in the wider, outside the Buddhist insight world, that some people refer to what I'm talking about to here, is not mindfulness. They use the word presence. Practicing presence to the present moment. And so practicing presence means mindful, but you're being mindful more than just with the cognitive mind that knows. You're being present with all your faculties. In your body, hearing, listening, smelling, feeling, emoting, kind of the resonance, all the ways in which we resonate and feel what's going on. Presence means so much more than just mindfully, non-reactive awareness, I think. Or it fills in, it puts, fullness into what non-reactive awareness might be. But what's fascinating for me about this word presence, it can be something we do, but it's also what's present here. And some people say what's present here is many things, and so there's a presence here of calm. There's a presence here of attentiveness. There's a presence here of maybe of certain values. Many people, when they come into a Buddhist community, have a heightened value in kindness, friendliness, compassion, and so what's the presence of a kind community, or a presence of a space where there's an openness and attentiveness, awareness. So, in some circles, non-Buddhist circles, people are also practicing mindfulness, but they call it the presence of God, or the presence of the divine, or the presence of the sacred, or the presence of, in Buddhism, people might say the presence of emptiness, or the presence of compassion. What is it? Is there something here? Some of you would prefer not to use these languages, this way of talking, but if you want to kind of understand a little bit our practice of mindfulness, how it overlaps with so many different practices in other religions and other ways, you need to kind of appreciate that they have other language than we have. And one of them is presence. And so when you show up, what's the presence you bring? Not just what what awareness do you bring, but what more do you bring to the table, to the situation? And sometimes I go home and I feel, I bring exhaustion. After a 7-day retreat sometimes, and after that closing circle, I bring exhaustion. Sometimes I come home from retreat and I bring a lot of calmness. I feel very quiet. Sometimes I bring all kinds of different things home. Sometimes I bring grumpiness home. So what kind of presence do we bring in this situation? And how do we bring awareness to how we are and what we're bringing to it, where we hold it with this non-reactive awareness? The bottom line for mindfulness practitioners, I would like to suggest, or the kind of the first approach is to really learn well what non-reactive awareness is. That's really key to everything else. Because without the non-reactive awareness, self-awareness can be bad news for a few of us. People discover all kinds of things about themselves which are not necessarily, you don't necessarily want to have it projected onto the wall so everyone to see what's going on in your mind. And we're grumpy or something, it's like, oh no, not again, or other people are being grumpy, and not again. You feel like that. Last time I was this person, they were grumpy, and I think I'm going to recede into the background or shut down a little bit because this is too much for me, or I don't know. What exactly I'm saying here. What I'm trying to get across is if we can learn to practice non-reactive awareness, if that can be the bottom line, the kind of fundamental thing we're doing, then all the other things we pay attention to, it's a little bit safer, it's a little bit wiser, a little bit more, it kind of works better. Because then we don't get caught in our reactivity in the way that we're present and aware. So I might be grumpy, but I'm not then afraid or angry with myself or self-conscious or embarrassed. It's just, I'm just grumpy. That's how it is now. And so it's very different than if I'm embarrassed or upset with myself. And the same thing with other people. Occasionally people in the world don't behave very well. It might happen. And then if we can have non-reactive awareness of it, then maybe there's a whole different way in which the situation can unfold. For example, what if the person's misbehaving, and what if you say, what else is present here? What is there? What can I attune to in this person? This person's certainly angry, but as I take the time to attune myself to the person, I see the person's also very afraid. That seems to be the background for this anger, is their fear and insecurity. Does that make a difference, how you relate to them and then how you connect then because of it? Or, so this non-reactive awareness is the foundation. So, but non-reactive awareness maybe is not enough. Maybe the fullness of mindfulness practice has all these different dimensions to it that does involve, it's not passive, does involve intentionality of some type from you, some sense of purpose. Let's practice non-reactive awareness to become better attuned, better connected, better aware of the context and the atmosphere and what else is present here. Let's enter into this world more fully so that we can be wise and caring for this world in a way that we can't if we are not really aware, attuned, connected, and respectful of everyone. So, mindfulness, bring mindfulness into your life. At the end of retreats, people often ask, this mindfulness is fine, how do I bring it into my life? And some of you maybe got more than you wanted to today. Wow, that's a lot of work. That's a lot to do. So maybe we can take a couple of minutes if some of you have a comment or a question you'd like to make about any of this or about anything else. We have a few minutes here.
Hold it like a rock star. Thank you. Hi, thank you so much. With the non-reactive awareness and just being aware of sort of this, where other people are at, where you're at, I've had situations and I've heard a lot of teachers say the way people behave towards you has more to do with them than you. So I try to bring that into my awareness, but sometimes if there's like so much of someone's anger coming towards you, I just don't know. I can't always be present with that and work with it. And it's very upsetting in relationships because I feel like there's been situations where I didn't feel like I did anything, but I'm bringing up something in someone else. And then it wasn't savable, even with the awareness of what's going on in that other person. So I guess in that situation, I can only work with my reactions to it. And it's just really, it can be very painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's huge, the topic what you raised. There's so many variables, so many different ways that this plays itself out. So I'll say a few words. One is that there is something to be said about being prepared for those events. Not to kind of just show up and think you're supposed to take care of it then and there. But if it's a regular thing, enough prepare yourself. And one of the ways is to meditate. Not necessarily just before the event, but just a regular practice, because it gives you the presence of mind, the calmness, the attentiveness, so that you're not reactive excessively. That someone's angry with you, and then you can kind of be a little bit calm enough to then find your bearings and know what you should do. That's one. The other is in preparing. If it's someone you know well, and this happens, regularly enough, wait for a time when it's not happening and everything is cool and nice, and say, "Can we have a little conversation? It would be helpful for me. I get really afraid or it's challenging for me when you're angry, and it's probably going to happen again. Could we have some understanding of how we navigate that next time it happens? Like, can I just raise my hand and we pause and breathe deeply for 3 breaths? Would that be okay with you?" Or something. See if you can make some kind of arrangement ahead of time. Might work, might not. And sometimes it's helpful in terms of, in certain circumstances, it's helpful to let people know the impact their anger has on you. And there are some people, if you tell them, "Boy, I feel really afraid right now." Some people are surprised by that, and it kind of changes the context. Like, well, what do I do now with my anger if they're afraid? Do I just keep going or hold back? And so some people, that's a powerful thing to say. "Boy, I'm really afraid right now." And then it might change the context of the conversation. It happened here in this building for me once where we were doing renovation on the building and there was a lot of noise. And one of the neighbors who had a tendency to complain about any noise that came out of this building. I mean, imagine, what do we do here? But occasionally, there's noise coming out. And there was a renovation work, and the person came over and was furious. And I was the recipient of this fury, and I just stood there receiving all this fury. It was quite something. And the person finally paused, and I said this. I said, "Oh, I feel really afraid right now." The person immediately calmed down. It was dramatic. And I don't think the person wanted to have that impact. And realizing how big the impact had been, then the person backed down dramatically from it, and the whole thing kind of, de-escalated or whatever. So I don't know, that doesn't always work, but it's a whole art. I mean, I don't want to suggest that it's a simple and easy thing to do. And sometimes, in certain situations, the best thing to do is get out of there. Stand behind someone else. So it's so many different, scenarios where this plays out. But this idea of preparing yourself thinking of this, by just practicing and developing capacity for mindfulness and calm awareness, so that you have maybe the best chance to figure out what to do.
Thank you.
So maybe one more, all the way in the back, if you don't mind taking it there, and then we'll stop here.
No worries.
All the way,
Oh.
yeah.
Well, I notice in myself that I became reactive when I heard that this was being broadcast on YouTube. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on how we can mindfully relate with YouTube and social media.
Oh, because YouTube is, the politics, the economics, the capitalism, there's so many problems with YouTube and social media and all these reasons, right?
Things like that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was just wondering what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, that's a big topic, and I think it's reasonable to have your concern, and I wish I was as well informed maybe as you are about how all this works. So I'm remiss in not being fully educated about the impact and how it all works. But what I understand is that we're using the social media, or the YouTube, that's what it's called, YouTube, for a greater good. And we're taking something and we're putting a positive spin in it, so it's being used in a good, healthy way. And one of the evidences that maybe it's a healthy place on YouTube was at some point someone joined us for the first time on YouTube, and they put in the chat, "This is the friendliest place I've ever seen on YouTube." And so, I don't know if that's true. I'm not on YouTube otherwise, but I'm hoping that the goodness of what we're doing here is doing greater good for the world than harm.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So, there's a tea now, as you say hello to each other. Some of you are here for the first time, are new. What I'd like to ask you, if you're willing, and you don't have to, but if you could just turn to someone next to you and say hello, and even if it's your first time here, welcome them. Welcome each other. And if you want to say a little bit more, you can say, was there anything about this talk that was, maybe useful for you to hear, or interesting, that you want to kind of think about more or something? And then it can just be 2 minutes or so if you'd like. It's just to be friendly. And then if those of you who want to stay, we'll have the tea time and stand outside. We can take off the masks outside, and it's blue skies, so it should be good for a few minutes, for a little while. Thank you.